Hello and welcome to the CAPE podcast. CAPE standing for the Child Abuse Prevention and Education Podcast. My name is Christy McVie and I am an ex-West Australian police officer who spent 10 years with the police where I was trained as a specialist child interviewer and a child abuse detective. This podcast is all about sharing what I learnt, saw and knew whilst investigating child sexual abuse in the police force. It is also about sharing the knowledge that I gained in that time that helped me with my own parenting of my then 2-year-old daughter. My mission is to help share my knowledge and to help you in your role as parents to keep your kids safe, along with guest experts in the field of child abuse prevention and education, both in person and online. Thank you so much for joining in on the fight to prevent child sexual abuse. Your kids will thank you for it. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the CAPE podcast, the Child Abuse Prevention and Education podcast. This one's just going to be a quick and short and sharp one with me on this Friday afternoon. I've just done another podcast interview, which will be coming up very shortly, with a guest who was very exciting to speak to. But I just wanted to do a quick, short, sharp podcast in between all of my other guests because sometimes it's nice to just spitball what's going on in my brain. And sometimes I don't feel comfortable doing that in, say, Instagram or TikTok or anywhere else. And quite frankly, this has been a week. So what's been happening this week for me? So last week, when I was releasing the podcast, there was the Welcome to Sex controversy over the book and what it contains. And quite frankly, and I love that. Why am I saying that all the time? Quite frankly, I like the book. I went on TikTok last week and basically with my 15-year-old daughter who gave her opinion on the book over on TikTok, if you haven't seen it. And she was of the opinion that the book was really awesome, that she thought it was cool, that it is really helpful for kids, and that it was age appropriate from anyone who's in high school, because she seems to think that anyone who's in high school needs to see the information in this book. If you haven't already gone and got a copy, definitely go and get a copy of this book. If you have young people and they're not yet at the age of going into this really far as that they haven't yet learnt the lessons about sex education. It's obviously not for kids if you haven't had those conversations yet. But if you haven't had those conversations because you're choosing not to have those conversations and you need a way to help them discover, what is healthy sexual or sexuality education, then this is a great book, because some of the stuff in here is really helpful for young people to understand what's going on in their bodies. But not only that, I mean, they've got some other great books about welcome to consent, welcome to periods, welcome to boobies, I think it might be called. I haven't got that book. But they've also got in here, it's talking about all methods of sex. It's not just talking about sex in generic terms. For instance, it's talking about all types of sex, which includes penile vaginal sex, oral sex on boys, oral sex on girls, fingering, scissoring, anal sex. It's talking about there is some hand jobs. What else is in here? I'm just looking at the book now. I'm flicking through as I'm talking. It talks about, the fact that you're not going to know what you're doing to begin with, and what's normal, not normal, orgasms, hooking up culture, relationships, how to have a healthy relationships, breakups, dealing with broken hearts. It's got stories from young people. It's about, advice to young disabled people, looking after yourself and your partner, being a partner, being aware of your partners. Like, seriously, I didn't see this part, how to put a condom on, the pill or contraception, STIs or sexually transmitted infections. Honestly, if our parents had had these conversations with us, it would have been made a massive difference to a lot of us. if our parents hadn't, had these conversations, there would have been, and as my daughter pointed out, it could quite possibly having this information and having these conversations with your child could quite possibly prevent sexual abuse by a peer or another person or an adult. It even talks about inappropriate relationships between adults and young people. So that's why I love the book. And, the other thing about the book that I love is that if you have an LGBTQI plus child who might not be ready to come out to the world, but is wanting to learn about this stuff, quite often when I was a police officer, they're very vulnerable to abuse online, because they will go seek that information out online. And that is where there's a lot of predatory behavior by older individuals who will prey on young LGBTQI plus people. So again, I think it's really important to remember that our kids need this information, because if they're not getting it from us as the leader in their education around sexuality and health, then they're going to go to the internet, because what do we tell them when they ask us a question? Google it. And if we don't have some control over, if you're more worried about your kid having this information, I can tell you from experience and from knowledge and from they will go and Google it, and they will get it from porn instead. So that's why I'm not against this book, because at least it's, nice little cartoon drawings that are correct drawings, instead of, a full-blown porn video that is really, really poorly, they haven't discussed consent, and there's gagging and spitting and all sorts of other stuff that goes on in porn. So, and then the only other thing that has come up this week from this book that I wanted to mention, and I literally just saw a petition from, I can't think of what's it called. There's a petition going around in regards to this book, and the petition's in regards to a chapter in the book that says media and social media and sharing of nudes, and about the fact that in here it's giving the advice that if teens feel the need to share a nude, that to do so by not sharing it with their face in it or their head in it. So to be honest, I've given that advice to young people before, because, and I hope that doesn't shock you, because if young people are going to do it, they're going to do it anyway at some point. Let me rephrase that. If a young person can't be educated or talked around to not sending nudes to people, and they've got it in their mind that they need to do it in order for people to like them, or for whatever reason, because some young people, it's not about the nude, it's about the attention that they're getting in that moment with that nude. It's not like sending nudes is not about the nude. For people who just think about the psychology behind it. I'm not a psychologist. I have never studied this stuff, but when I speak to young people about this stuff and I ask them why, and they, honestly give me an honest answer and feedback, they're usually telling me something along the lines of, I want to be liked. I like the attention. I want a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It's because they asked. They've got low self-esteem. They don't know what to do when they're asked, so they do it. They feel the pressure to do it. So some kids, a lot of kids out there are going to do this, regardless of knowing that it's wrong, regardless of the fact that it might result in issues for them down the track, regardless of the fact that they know that, it could be shared. They're going to do it, right? And the only way we can minimize harm to them is by, if they're going to do it, they do it in a way that cannot be brought back to them or lead back to them, or that they have deniability. And that's why I have given that advice previously to young people. my first advice is don't do it, because you can't be guaranteed. At the minute that image leaves your phone, you can't guarantee what's going to happen to it next or after. But my second advice is, if you can't get out of it, desperately want to do it, again, like what's the psychology behind feeling the pressure and need to send it? Is it because you don't know how to say no? Like, that's another conversation you could be having with a young person. If you feel so pushed and pressured to do it and you can't say no, then why do you feel like you can't say no to people? How do we empower you to know that you can say no? Do you know that you don't have to consent to this? Actually, do you know that this is actually against the law until this age, to 16 to 18? There's so many aspects to this, and it's not cut and dry, but there is still young people out there who are going to send these nudes regardless of all of that knowledge. And how do we reduce harm to them? Well, make it so that if it is ever spread out and shared and sent around, or potentially put on a porn site or whatever, that they're not identifiable and it can't come back to bite them on the butt later on. That is why I give that advice. I hope that made sense. And so when I saw that there's a petition going around about having that section removed out of the book, I don't quite agree with that, for the reasons I've just stated. But I also think that I can understand why people are worried about that advice being given out to teens. But again, if you're doing your job as a parent of a teen or a young person and you're talking about these issues with them, you're going to help them come to a realization of why am I doing this? What is the reason behind sending a nude or a picture or a video to someone? Why do I feel the urge? Why do I feel the need? Why do I feel pressured? Whatever reason. And if you can have that conversation with them, that is another way to help them, maturely understand and make better decisions, critical thinking decisions. And these are why we have conversations around this Welcome to Sex book and what the nudes and inappropriate images. We can't just tell people don't. We need to give them actions and tools to be able to deal with what pressures they're having. That was all I had on my mind today. I hope that makes sense. I'm not sure we'll see how these ones are received, but I will be releasing another guest podcast in the next interview. I'm not sure who it's going to be yet, but enjoy. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Please leave reviews if you do. And please know that I'm really loving that people are downloading and listening. It's just so exciting for me that people are listening to this podcast about these really important topics that I know will make a difference in your kids' lives. So thank you for giving a shit about child safety and online safety and all of these topics that we're talking about on this podcast. Have a good rest of your weekend or whenever you listen to this. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. Education empowers children and empowers parents, and education prevents abuse. That is why I'm here, and that is why you are here. So thank you. If you want any further information or support, follow me on social media, either under Christy McVie or Cape AU social media accounts. I'll put the links in the show notes. You can also purchase a signed copy of my book, Operation KidSafe, via the website at www.cape-au.com. Also on my website is a free ebook titled 10 Tips to Keep Your Kids Safe from Abuse, and self-paced courses for parents to help you in your journey of child abuse prevention. Don't forget to join our free Facebook group called Operation KidSafe Parenting Group. Please see the show notes for any extra information, links and help should you be looking for extra support. Thank you once again for giving a shit about preventing child sexual abuse. See you next time.